Yeah, so I guess I'll start with kind of what influenced my decision to reach out and kind of offer my facilitation of mural stuff. Over the last couple years, I've been doing a lot of community engaged artwork and figuring out ways to, I guess, ways to carve out space where I can for folks to experience the arts and to experience being able to use the arts in their own activism. And so it was somewhat in response to, you know, the graffiti that had happened at Clayton Jackson McGee. Not necessarily to say that that was, you know, the wrong necessarily thing to do. I can't really speak on that, but it just made me think that, you know, there was maybe missed opportunities to activate the space and some of the stuff that was happening so far. And I reached out to Dancing Creatives and the Clayton Jackson McGee committee. I was already kind of scheduled to help facilitate a community engaged event this year, and then that, you know, it had gotten canceled, but then reinvigorated when I reached out, and they decided that, yeah, you know, having something artistic for folks to do at the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial would be welcomed. And so, yeah. From there, it was pretty quick. Like, we planned it in like 2 days. Dancing Creatives was doing their documentary filming for Black and Indigenous folks to kind of express their feelings about the current times. And we made an event sort of directed towards Black and Indigenous voices to just have space to talk about stuff, to make art around things, and to really, you know, have a space that didn't necessarily exist so much before, right out in the open. So they blocked off the street. We brought we got some big, you know, panels that were donated by Laurel Saunders. We did some brainstorming. Sandra Oyonle was the one who kind of recommended doing a portrait of Breonna Taylor to acknowledge, you know, the women victims of police brutality. Just lots of kind of community conversation along the way. And really all I did was contribute my skills as a portrait artist to, you know, make the portraits kind of outlined there, and I let everybody else sort of fill it in. And it was really interesting how many folks were, I guess, a little bit worried that, like, there was going to be some sort of, you know, people were going to write profanity all over it, or like, why aren't you giving people direction about, you know, how to do this beautiful piece of art? And for me, it was just more about the process of, like, even if, you know, we can't hang these panels up at Clayton Jackson McGee because people have some, you know, real stuff to say on the panels, you know, there's still a home for them. And I really just wanted to focus on that. Like, this is not a censored space. This is where you can say whatever you want. And the interesting thing about it, you know, with community painting is everybody sort of silently vibes off of each other. To the point where, like, even in not saying, like, not saying there can't be any profanity on this or whatever, like, nobody wrote anything bad. It was literally just people sharing ideas and building on that space to make it what it became. And even after that, people, when the murals were hung up, people were still adding stuff after that, and they bought another panel for people to add to that because the murals were getting full of stuff, and it became, you know, a space that was a lot more activated, I think, than before, where it was just kind of like, you can stand here, but what else can you do in that space? So,
yeah. How was it to, like, coordinate, you know, a community making art project, you know, like in this time when we're trying to kind of keep distance and everything? How did that work?
I was really, oh gosh, because a lot of my stuff this year has been pushed to next year. A lot of the, you know, painting sessions that I had scheduled, I wasn't really sure how it was going to work. I knew that because we could, you know, the panels were fairly large, we could space them out in the street because we had the street blocked off. We had a station set up where people didn't have masks or gloves. They could get it from the station for free. And yeah, just made sure that there were some elements of social distancing happening at all points of the mural painting session. We had volunteers. I know Brian Barber was there helping. And it worked, surprisingly, I feel, because pretty much everyone who painted had a mask on or gloves or some sort of protection. People were really sort of respecting each other's space.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of unspoken collaboration.
Yeah.
I think there, possibilities definitely, or the possibilities opened up in my eyes when we did the George Floyd murals, just from the standpoint that it did show that you could get a fairly large amount of people into a space if you open up the space more and still have people respecting the social distancing and stuff like that. There's also ways to time things. Like, I think there was some intentionality of having like younger folks, kids come towards the beginning part of the activities and kind of spreading things out that way, so it wasn't like everybody coming all at once.
Yeah, that's
And
a great idea. I'm actually going to ask one other question, Miri, about the what's going on with the Chief Buffalo Mural Project, because that started last year, right?
Yeah.
And it's it was continuing into the summer, but what is like the status of that, and how can the community support that?
Yeah. So for those who aren't super familiar with it, last summer we started a series of community painted murals, sort of dedicated to the story of Chief Buffalo. And if you don't know the story of Chief Buffalo, I guess the long story short there is that nobody would have been able to immigrate to Duluth without the Treaty of 1854, which is basically Native folks giving other folks rights to live here. And it's a story that, you think that we would celebrate in Duluth, because it's kind of, it's why everybody exists here as one community. But I think there's a lot of confusion around, treaties and stuff like that. So down by the lake walk, there's, that winding maze of slopes and staircases, and we started painting 3 murals down there last summer. And we were gonna finish like a bunch more walls this summer, but with COVID, we decided, if there's too many unknowns to promote anything right now. So it got moved to next summer. We have a fundraising link on a platform called IOBI, which is in your own backyard, and I can forward that to Amanda or put it in the chat a little bit later.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we're just fundraising for it, and we're meeting with the Buffalo family to get a sense of, what designs they want to see there, trying to work with the city of Duluth to get like full approval, because there's been a couple obstacles there. And yeah, just really trying to engage the community through social media and things like that, so we can at least inform the design process before actually painting in person next year.
Very cool. So, I mean, this is kind of like going back to one of those other ideas about, the second objective we're hoping that this opens up conversation for with these forums and thinking about like anti-racism. And I think projects like the Chief Buffalo Project really are fitting that spirit, encouraging us to embrace history that we've definitely overlooked and aren't celebrating. So, I mean, through like the fundraising link, that's one way that maybe the arts community could help support that project. In addition, not only just giving, but also sharing and encouraging other people to share. Is there ways in the work that you're trying to do with the city to get full approval for the project that, I wonder if the arts community could put, like kind of come together and put some social capital as a group behind that, as opposed to individuals? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to figure out kind of, right now they have a series of questions that they want us to re-answer, including, give us examples of how murals work in other places, which is kind of like, a lot of the questions are a little bit busy work, it feels like.
Sure.
So we're doing that busy work, and then once we get that in, we'll figure out if it gets that full approval, which I think it will. I feel like it's one of the more, it's pretty important to have artwork by Indigenous folks on Indigenous land.
Yeah,
by and for Indigenous folks. So right now there's not really too much of a public push, but if we don't get that support from the city, or if there's more obstacles, I'll probably be really vocal about it.
Okay.
Let folks know.
Yeah.
I like to be transparent with processes. So if there's questions that I feel are weird, I'm going to tell folks.
Right.